Hey everyone, Brad with All in Woodworks. Today I'm going to show you how to build floating wooden coasters.
All in
Woodworks. Let's get started. I'm going to be using some black walnut and some wenge for these set of coasters, but you can use whatever you have on hand. This black walnut's a little thick, so I'm going to cut it in half. If you don't have a bandsaw, you can use your table saw like I'm doing. Just make sure to watch those fingers. I cut this a little over 3/8 of an inch. You'll see why in a second. Now let's take a look at that wenge. The thickness of the wenge was pretty good, so all I really need to do is trim them to width. I'm going to do about 1.5 inches for this. Just be careful with wenge. It does have a tendency to chip and splinter. It can be a difficult wood to work with sometimes. Now that I got one side of my walnut pieces nice and straight, I'm going to go to the table saw again and trim them up on the other side to make them nice and even. I'm just going to take a little bit off the one side, and I'm using a push pad to get even pressure on the wood as I push it through the blade, keeping it nice and tight to the fence. I get all the pieces over to the planer, and I'm going to set the height to about a little over 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to do this because after the final glue up, I'm going to plane them one more time for the final height, which is 3/8 of an inch. I think one of my next projects is going to be doing some dust collection for this planer. If you have any suggestions, put them in the comments for me. Just go nice and easy and everything should be great. You don't want to take too much material off all at once or you'll get chip out, especially on the wenge. Now that everything's nice and even, I can take it over to the workbench and start gluing everything up. Put a nice bead of glue on one of the pieces and spread it out nice and even, and then get some clamps out. I really like to use these spring clamps on the edge just to hold everything together while I get the clamps ready. Then it's pretty easy just to get the other clamps in place. I don't have a lot of clamps, but I'm going to use as many as I can to get nice even pressure along the length of the board. This project's going to end up making about 12 coasters total. I'm going to have 3 of these glue ups to do, and then we're going to let them dry overnight. Three little maids all in a row. Dry, my babies, dry. Gonna let these bake and we'll check them in the morning. Alright, day number 2. Now that everything's baked overnight and all the glue is dry, we're going to grab our glue ups and take them over to the table saw, take off all the clamps, and check our handiwork. Everything's looking pretty good, nice and straight and even. A little bit of glue squeeze out, but we're going to take care of that here in a second and get that off before we put it through the planer. If you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you saw this video of me scraping the glue off a little while ago. And if you didn't see it, then why aren't you following me on Instagram and Facebook? Just do it. Go ahead. Follow me. I'll wait. Just hit pause real quick, come back and watch the end of the video. Alright kids, it's planer time again. We're going to get these down to a thickness of 3/8 of an inch and get all that excess glue off, and then we're going to take them over to the workbench to do some sanding. I don't really think there's anyone that likes sanding, but it's one of those necessary evils. These are pretty good coming out of the planer, so I'm going to start with a 120 grit and use my orbital sander. Get both sides really well, wipe it off, and then I'm going to go down to a 220 grit and do it all over again. Like I said, nobody likes sanding. Back to the table saw, we're going to raise the height of the blade a little over 3/8 of an inch, and we're going to set the fence to 4 inches. We're going to start cutting these bad boys. Got my miter gauge out, and I'm going to take the glue up and I'm going to trim off one edge, and then I'm going to put that along the fence that is set to 4 inches, and I'm going to cut the coasters out and get them cut to size. Some of you might be wondering, how come you're not using a chop saw? Well, I found out that my chop saw blade was not 90 degrees to the fence, and I'm a little too lazy to fix it right now, so we're gonna go with this. It's a maintenance thing, you know. Do as I say, not as I do. Don't judge me. Now that we've got everything to an approximate size, we're going to keep the fence at 4 inches and we're going to turn the pieces 90 degrees and cut the other end to get a nice square coaster. This is why maintaining your tools is so important. Everything's nice and straight and 90 degrees and perfect. All right, now it's time to make these coasters float. It's time to put a nice little undercut chamfer on these. I gotta be honest, I had a little problem with this on my router table. There was too much clearance surrounding the bit, so it was getting caught as I was pushing it through. This was leading to some chip out and some little bumps on the underside of the chamfer, which I had to correct. Unfortunately, I didn't get video of the correction that I made, but what I did is I used an auxiliary fence and clamped it to the first fence and kind of made a Mach 0 clearance jig for it. Again, that Wenge really likes to chip and splinter, so go slow. All right, we're coming up to the finish. Literally, the finish. I use about 3 coats of satin poly, but the first coat's actually 50-50. It's 50% poly and 50% mineral spirits. And what this does is it helps seal the wood, and then I put 2 full coats of a satin polyurethane over the top. Make sure you sand between each coat and let it dry thoroughly. And then after your hard work is paid off, your floating coaster should look just like this. Not much more to say. I do finish them off with some cork on the underside. And man, look at that chamfer. Love it. So that's it. That's how you make the floating wooden coasters. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification button to see my next video when it comes out. I'm Brad with All In Woodworks. See you next time.